Hi, I'm Dr. Sarah Oreck. I am a reproductive psychiatrist, co founder, and CEO of Mavida Health. And I'm so excited today to be with Amy. Oh, actually, I should say Dr. Amy Divaraniya. Dr. Divaraniya, tell us all about yourself.
Well, Sarah, it's so great to see you. I'd love to tell a little bit more about me. I am a scientist by training, so I have a PhD in biomedical sciences focusing on genetics and genomics. I'm a data scientist. I love big sets of data. But what I found myself doing is navigating multiple health journeys throughout life. And so I wanted to figure out a way to bring objectivity into women's health, and that's really where this company and Oova started.
I love that. And I'm so excited to discuss because that was my wish with Mavida Health as well. There's so much subjectivity when it comes to psychotherapy, hand waving, this is what therapy is. But we really believe that therapy can be more objective, that there's measurement based care for a reason, that we should actually use it. And we're really thrilled that all of our clinicians are trained under our sort of Mavida protocol and give really consistent, high fidelity care, which again is so, I think why there's so much synergy between our organizations. And I'm so excited to chat about it. Of course, for all of us, this sometimes comes with a personal story. I was a reproductive psychiatrist before having children or even being on my reproductive journey. But growing up, I saw my mom go through very early perimenopause. I myself had difficult periods, and I always knew female reproductive hormones make us different and they impact everything in our bodies, including our mental health so profoundly. And I also navigated an IVF journey, pregnancy loss. So tell me a little bit about how you came to build this organization.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm sorry you had to go through such a difficult journey to get some clarity. It's unfortunate that there's so many women and families that have to go through something similar. It's never identical, but they're their own struggles, and it's really heartbreaking. In my case, it my journey really started from my first period. I always struggled with irregular cycles. As you can tell, I'm South Asian, so for my mom, the number one criteria was like, okay, are you going to give me grandchildren? And if you don't have regular periods, that's going to be a difficult thing. So how do we solve that? And so when I went to an OB, it was after college, and I was misdiagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome just by looking at my external features. I had just graduated college, put on some weight, hadn't had time to get my eyebrows done, so I had facial hair, some acne, and they put me on metformin, birth control, and like sent me on my way. No hormone testing, nothing objective was really put into that diagnosis. Fast forward a few more years, and I started trying to have a baby, and I found myself navigating a pretty devastating infertility journey. And I mean, I'm a scientist, right? So you learn about our reproductive health, like health, you learn about ovulation and things like that, but you really don't get the true data. You don't really understand, like, well, if I have sex and I don't get pregnant, what now? And there's no solutions out there. Everything's designed for that 28-day cycle woman. And if you're like me, there's nothing for you. And so I really wanted to figure out a way to empower a woman to navigate her health journey, whatever that may be, with actual objective data and be her own advocate. And I also, similar to what you were sharing, I wanted to bring objectivity into women's health because the medical community, unfortunately, is very limited in the amount of data they use to
Yes,
treat women. And I wanted to fix that.
absolutely. So it comes by, in some ways, like, I think what's difficult is that we can't blame the medical doctors or the clinicians because the research doesn't exist. And the little research that does exist is not taught, unfortunately, to medical students or even to residents. And this is what's hard. And it's been notoriously difficult to do a blood test, for example, when you have PCOS or difficult periods and say, aha, this is what this means. Because I think it's important for people to kind of know the evidence base of an absolute hormone level doesn't actually mean that much. It's the delta, it's the change and how it impacts each individual.
That's exactly right. I mean, the hormones that we're talking about here are fluctuating on a daily basis. So, yes, getting a blood draw, we're not trying to replace it because there's certain biomarkers that are captured in a blood draw that are so critical to the full picture. But now, if you're looking at hormones like estrogen and progesterone and LH, they're so dependent on what cycle day you're on. And when you're
Yes.
getting a blood draw, you're rarely looking at your cycle day. you're typically looking at when your calendar says, okay, you have an hour here that you can go get your blood drawn.
Right, right.
They don't
That's right.
always align.
And so tell me what you ended up, because I think this is, I mean, it's a coping strategy, and certainly it was for me with Mavida Health, of like when you go through a painful experience, how you can, intellectualize and in some ways make it better for someone else. So tell us a little bit more about your fertility journey, if you can get into any specifics, and then ultimately what you all offer at Uva.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've never had it be called a coping mechanism, but I kind of think that's exactly what this was.
100%.
Um,
It's an
it was
adaptive one for sure. It's
it was
wanting, right, like to make something, to make meaning out of a really difficult experience.
best distraction for sure. So I guess like starting with the journey, as I mentioned, I had irregular cycles. So what I started doing when my husband and I decided to start trying to have a baby, we agreed we did not want to pursue invasive treatments, mostly because I personally had a very deep mistrust when it came to the medical community and my fertility. Being misdiagnosed with PCOS, I didn't really want a doctor to tell me how or when I could get pregnant.
When did you
We were both
find out about the misdiagnosis, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with it right out of college and was put on metformin and birth control, became anemic because I was bleeding so heavily, became depressed. I got every side effect in the book, and then kind of dealt with it for like 3-ish years. And then I went to a new OB, and in the intake, I said I had PCOS, I was on these drugs. And think about 3 years, I got my eyebrows done, I lost the weight, like I was back to myself, right? And the doctor had done some hormone testing on me before I went in. And what she said, dating myself a little bit, she still wrote notes on a clipboard. Walked in, was like, "You don't have PCOS, get off these meds," and moved on to the next set of questions. No explanation, no like justification for what I've been dealing with for 3 years. Just, you don't have it, move on. We made
I
a
think
mistake.
this is such, I mean, even the way that you're describing, I think is really important, because this is so much of what people and women experience with physicians, of just like no explanation. And it's like, actually patients are savvy. And I always tell this, I know sometimes with insurance based, and there's like so much here, insurance reform and healthcare reform in general, but like spend a little bit of time just saying like, hey, here's why I don't think, because of X, Y,
Exactly.
and Z. And I think as people unfortunately have to advocate more and more for themselves, it's sort of like, whoa, slow down. This is big news for me. Can you tell me a little bit of what you mean or why? It's hard though in
And
the
you're
moment.
It's a very hard moment because aside from the fact that like you are being told this information, you're trying to understand that, comprehend it, but
Yes.
you're also like, wait a minute, so what?
So
Like
what does
before I
this
can
mean? Yeah.
right. So what have I been dealing with? And the only answer, and you can't even formulate a meaningful question in those 6 minutes that you have with that doctor, right? So it's a very difficult moment. But what I thought was interesting is she just said you have irregular cycles. That's just normal for you. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, great, fine, I can deal with that, but I don't need to be on meds for this. Like, there was just so many things that came up after the fact, and no one had an answer for me. Because going back to your other point about the studies, like, again, I don't fault my doctor. When you're looking at these studies and the research that's being put out there, anyone that's like me, that has irregular cycles or South Asian or a certain like age range, you're taken out of those studies. You're an exclusion criteria.
That's right.
So even the data that's there is not meaningful. It's not representative of me, right? So I think the system fundamentally is broken. That's like another whole discussion we can have. Um, but given that whole
Mean, you should
journey,
have, like, my this is my big disclaimer. It's broken. We want to fix it. Doesn't mean you have to abandon it completely.
exactly.
AKA measles outbreaks all over this country. Like, there are still parts of medicine that really are functioning, but we just have to make it better for ourselves, especially when we're
Absolutely.
talking about, women of color and women generally.
Absolutely. Think of it as an ice sculpture, right? We're just chipping away to make this beautiful picture and like sculpture come out eventually. And
Eventually.
we will be alive to see it. I have to
Hope so.
believe it.
Okay, so then tell, so you don't have PCOS according to this other doctor without like any evidence to back it up. So then what happens in the fertility journey?
Yeah, so we agreed to do it naturally. And of course, like most fertility journeys, it started off fun. Like, okay, we got every ovulation tracker. I'm tracking my BBT. I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to be doing.
That's
All of a
basal
sudden,
body temperature for people that don't know.
thank you. But I had every app and I'm like very diligently tracking everything. Data scientist here, so like the more information I can capture, the better. And initially it was fun, like sending text messages like I'm ovulating, get home quickly, like all the fun things that are associated with trying to have a baby. And
It
after
gets
the first
old pretty
month,
fast though.
it does. It does.
After
I
like
don't
month 2, you're like, "Oh, this isn't that fun anymore."
know. And I think we held on to it for a little bit. Like I will give ourselves a little bit of credit. But where it turned for me is when I got negative test after negative test, I would be disappointed, of course. But then seeing my partner disappointed was just something I couldn't take
Oh.
because and never did he put it on me. Never did was I to blame, but it felt like my body and I was failing in some way, right? And I didn't know how to fix it. So being a type A person, it's like you see a problem, find a
Yeah,
solution, and I
absolutely.
didn't know what that solution was. So what I ended up doing is I started isolating myself from him as well. So yes, we would go through the motions, but I would never share with him that like, oh, I think we got like this is the month or anything like that. And I dealt with each negative test on my own. And so it got dark really fast because you do find yourself in this rabbit hole that just keeps getting deeper and deeper. Um, and I started seeing that like on these ovulation tests, I wasn't getting peaks, I was getting highs, but in my journey, I only saw that 5 times. That's smiley face never blinked.
Never blink.
It never blinked. And so I'm like, something's wrong with these tests. Like, I don't understand how this is happening. And then looking at the small fine print, it says if you have irregular cycles or hormonal imbalance or reproductive condition, these results are
Valid,
not
yeah,
trustworthy, but
yeah, like,
meaningful for
valid,
you.
yeah, yeah.
And so I was like, great. So I'm starting with like something that's going to fail me to begin with. I have nothing of substance to start with. And my team often
Did
laughs
you
at
have
me
other signs of ovulation that you were like, "Okay, my cervical mucosa is changing, I'm" any kind of other
a little
data point?
bit. It's my hormones are irregular, right? Like I have irregular cycles, so there wasn't a pattern to necessarily follow. But yes, I was a bit obsessive
Yeah,
about
I'm sure.
everything.
I'm sure. And
And
also, this may not be the case for you, but I think even what you're describing is so common. And then we have male factor infertility, and
of
that,
course,
right, there is a huge percentage where it is due to the men and important to get, sperm tested, et cetera. But so often women will take it on as like their issue.
100%. And I'll be honest with you, it never crossed my mind
Yeah, isn't
to
that
even ask
wild?
him to
Yeah,
get
it's wild.
tested.
Right. And
Never.
we know like cannabis use,
Mhm.
microplastics, like all of this stuff
Everything.
really made a huge impact on sperm like motility and morphology, how it looks and how it moves, and it's really affected fertility rates as well.
But you're absolutely right. Like for somebody that's like a well-educated person, I took the whole burden on myself and never even once considered getting that simple test done, right? Um, and then you also find yourself in these like completely blacked out moments where, since like my son is in second grade now, so since he was in nursery school, they've been learning about the food groups and what your plate should look like. I would stand in my fridge every night going like, I know I need to eat healthy. I have no idea what to eat. I don't know how to make a balanced meal
Oh,
anymore.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
all common sense kind of escapes you
Yeah.
during
Well,
this
this
journey.
becomes such a focus for people, and like the rest of their lives feel like kind of on hold in some ways.
Absolutely. Nothing was happening. I didn't want to go to baby showers. Your feed is full of baby showers and
Yep.
announcements and all these things.
That's right.
You don't want to go to any of that. You're getting targeted with all these ads with false promises. So I did a social media cleanse. I'm like, I don't want
Yeah.
to be on this. I want
Yeah.
nothing to
That's
do with
right.
it. Um, and then I think like one of the moments for me was I would lie in bed crying because again, like I would have a negative test. My husband is a very like caring person. He would know something is off with me, but didn't know what to do. So like there were so many moments, and he shared this with me afterwards. After I started coming out a bit more publicly with the story, that he didn't know what to do except that like my love language is touch. So he would just caress my hand And that was all I needed.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to say, right? Nobody can take you out of that hole except yourself. And so, like, the real pivotal moment for me was I got another negative pregnancy test, and I was so confident we were pregnant that month. And I was sitting there with my dad's magnifying glass trying to find a ghost line on a test. And it baffled me that I was using this like 80-year-old, 60-year-old technology to try to find a line on something that should tell me if I can grow my family or not. And in my PhD work, I was doing such cool things. Like the technology and the analysis I was doing were so groundbreaking, yet none of that was being applied to us. I was still at the mercy of a line or a smiley face. So I was like, this needs to change. And all of a sudden, it was this pivotal moment where I'm like, okay, forget trying to get pregnant. We're going to solve this problem.
And so tell me what happened and tell me more about your test.
So I we basically created Oova, and I went into my lab that day and like I basically wrote 5 pillars on the board. I was like, okay, this test has to be quantitative. I don't want a stupid line. I don't want a smiley face. I need a number. I need this test to be personalized. I don't want to be compared to the 28-day woman. I want anything that we build to learn me and then tell me data about myself. I need it to be done in a non-invasive way. So no blood test, just something as simple as possible so it's accessible. It had to be in real time. I didn't want any samples to be mailed out. I wanted results that moment because every minute matters when you're trying to get pregnant. And the most important thing was it had to be clinically trusted. So if I was to collect UVA data for a month, 2 months, I should be able to go to my doctor with my reports, and the doctor says, oh, okay, I see what's going on. This is what we're going to do next.
That's right.
Right? So all 5 of those pillars have to be checked off with every single thing that we develop at Oova. And that was really the foundation. We set out to build it. So we've created an at-home hormone test. We measured 3 hormones at the moment quantitatively: LH, progesterone, estrogen. And we help
Fantastic.
women navigate whatever health journey they're on, fertility, perimenopause, or anything in between.
Can you tell us more about when you went to market, kind of all of the good and how it actually works?
Sure. Let me start with how it works, and we can go into the market. So the tests look like this: simple pee test, right?
Cool.
Every woman knows how to pee on a stick.
Yes.
I've learned that. But your kit will come with 15 tests that measure LH and progesterone. They're on a single test, and then 15 that measure estrogen. And basically, you register in the app. Depending on your health journey, the app will tell you which hormone to test on which day. So you're not guessing. On a testing day, you collect a urine sample in a cup, dip the appropriate hormone test in, wait 10 minutes, and then scan it with your phone. You don't have a device, we don't have any attachments on your phones, you're using just the phone as is, and you get a quantitative result within seconds.
Cool.
Right?
And
And
then
then
are
we
you
put it,
tracking this? Because
yeah,
again, just okay, so tell me how that works because
sure.
just doing that, I don't know if that tells you that much
No, of
information, but
course
how
not.
often are you doing it? And then when can you expect to have some vague understanding of what may be happening?
You will get an understanding from day one because you're getting quantitative levels and we put it into context for you. So, depending on the health journey, the context changes and the guidance changes. But as we collect more and more data, we are obviously able to learn your cycle. Something that came out through our analysis that I could not find published anywhere, but we see it in our data time and time again. Women don't ovulate the same on their left and right side of ovaries.
Yeah. Yeah,
We alternate every other month.
yes.
And so if you don't understand that, how are you ever going to time ovulation and intercourse properly?
It's interesting.
Right? And it changes as we get older. That's the other big thing. And women are typically not getting pregnant early in life anymore. We are pushing the ages that we're trying to conceive a little later. No shame in that, but our bodies are changing and we should know how that change is affecting us so we can hit our goals.
Absolutely.
Right? So we provide you with that context daily, but then we also show you what your hormone trends are. We identify patterns and we guide you through like what these patterns mean for you, symptoms to look forward to, just guide education on what's going on with your hormones. And then I think the most important thing is we also provide you with a list of questions to go to your doctor with.
Yeah, that's great.
So you don't have to think. Like, of course, like you think about it, but if your doctor throws a bunch of stuff at you in those 6 minutes, you also have a list of 4 to 5 questions that will give you more clarity in how it ties back to your Uber data.
That's fantastic. So tell me if I'm trying to conceive, struggling in the same way that you were, how can I get the test? How much is it? Is it covered by insurance? And then what is it like? How could this potentially help me become pregnant?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say you're like me, you have irregular cycles, you've been struggling for a few months, and now you're ready to be like, okay, do I try IVF or do I try something like Oova? I'd like to say we're not competing with your drugstore tests. Everyone should try those first because if they can work for you, no need to invest like money into something more complicated.
You mean
But
so
if
like
you're,
an ovulation test kit works for you, like leave it alone.
yeah, leave it alone. If you're not hitting your goals though, even though you're using those ovulation tests, when I say they're working for you, I mean you hit your goal, not that you're being told that you're ovulating and those kinds of things. Like you need to actually hit the goal that you want. If you're not, the way that Uva works right away is that because it is personalized, we learn what your baseline levels are and then detect fluctuations by comparing to that. So we've built this for the irregular woman. And what we see in our data is that that's 95% of the population.
No,
Only 5% of our users have 28-day cycles.
wow. And what's your data? Have you published anything yet? Where are you there?
We publish constantly. So for the past 5 years, Uva has been presenting research at all the leading medical conferences. I'm talking about the American College of OBGYNs, ASRM, the American Society of Reproductive Medicine, Menopause Society. It's really important for us to make sure that we're leading with data and not only educating the patient, but also educating the clinicians. Because like you said so many times, they don't have the data and they're so
Yeah,
eager for this information.
absolutely. So when did you launch?
We launched the fertility product in 2020. Great
So
timing, I
you've been
know.
on the market for a while. And so
We
where
have.
can people buy this? How much is it? Insurance? Tell us.
You can buy it on our website at the moment, uva.life. It's very easy. We offer all of our different products there, so you can definitely check that out. But then if your clinician is one of our clinical partners, they may have kits in stock, so you can always
Oh,
ask
cool.
them. That's one way to do it. But yeah, the price point is it's 129 per month if you're on a subscription, and you get 45 data points with each one of those.
Fantastic. And there's an app that sort of shows
Yeah.
you all of the things. Okay, cool. And, in this, there's like now an explosion of all of these types of companies. How would you say that you all are differentiated?
I think the biggest thing that differentiates us is the amount of effort and priority we give to research and validating the science. So we are not like you can't go on Instagram or like Facebook and find Uba everywhere. Like we don't have paid ads that are running. We're leading with research. All of these companies and ones you're referring to are at these conferences, but they're not presenting research. They're there as exhibitors. And there's a big difference there because we are trying to integrate ourselves in the clinical protocol and not just be available for
I think
patients to use
that's a
on their own.
huge difference. I also, you are, and listen, I think people with lived experience can be phenomenal leaders. But I think having the scientific background like you do is a really big differentiator. I think about all the Theranoses of the world
Yes.
and just how important it is to like be wary because it's just when the medical system has broken down in some ways for so many people, it opens this door and this void for a lot of grifting. And I
Yes,
think
it does.
frankly there's all these companies like popping up sometimes and I'm like, wait, what? Dropped out and is, has no work experience and yet is
Yeah.
telling me that they've invented something that's going to revolutionize all of women's health. And I think we have to have some cynicism around that. And so for me, the things that really, and why we did this and why it was important is like that research and also who the founder is. And, it's, I think we have to have a little heavy dose of cynicism around I'm going to come and kind of wreck all of this. And you just saw some ads on
Yes.
Instagram, and that's all there is to back it up. So I think though that makes me feel really, really confident around you all and this integration into healthcare providers.
Yeah.
I think is also really like healthcare just is going to continue to happen where healthcare providers are, and that's how we sort of see Mavida Health as well. Like there are much bigger platforms like Talkspace and BetterHelp, but what we don't see them doing is actually integrating into real healthcare. They're kind of like
Yeah.
trying to stand here alone and be like, we're better. And actually, they're not. And they have no evidence. And there isn't a lot of good quality data coming out of those organizations. And I agree with you that, like, Like, I think that's the biggest differentiator. And I'm so thrilled to know you all and to figure out how we can collaborate. And certainly we know that these changes and fluctuations impact mental health significantly. In addition to like the transitions, I'm really excited for the perimenopause work that you're doing. Can you tell us a little bit about that
Yeah,
offering?
I mean, I think you've touched on so much here. Like, number one thing I'd love to do is to remove the stigma around everything. Like you're talking about stigma around mental health, stigma around women's health, stigma around fertility, perimenopause. Like, oh my gosh, now all of a sudden perimenopause is a phase that we care about. Women have been going through it since the dawn of time, and yet now it's a brand new area. I don't know. So how do we remove these stigmas around like what women truly need? And to me, the way to do that is with data. So what was really interesting for us, we entered into the perimenopause phase because what we were seeing is that, as I mentioned, like Oova is designed for the irregular woman.
Yes.
So most of my users are not the 28-day cycle, early 20s trying to get pregnant, right? These are women that have been struggling. We saw that about 46% of our users were above the age of 35 at one point, all trying to get pregnant. And many of them were telling us that they were perimenopausal. So because we asked a bunch at intake of what, like any conditions or anything, and many were saying perimenopause. When you start to peel that onion back, right, what you start to see is that these women are not necessarily perimenopausal. They're 37, 38 years old, but struggling with irregular cycles. You peel that onion back further, they've always had irregular cycles, but now because of their age, they're getting this blanket diagnosis. And
Well,
so,
it's also tough because there's also a lot of symptoms that
of
can
course,
masquerade both as postpartum and perimenopause.
100%. The problem is that's not what we were seeing here, right? So there was a blanket diagnosis issue that was happening.
Just based
Understood it's
on the irregular periods and no other symptoms.
and age,
Okay, got it.
right? And so I was like, there has to be some hormonal signature tying a woman to perimenopause versus just having irregular cycles. Like, can we tease this out with data in any way? Well, you start to look at like any data that's out there to model off of, it doesn't exist.
Yes, yeah.
And so what we went to market with the perimenopause product is, hey guys, like we want to solve this, but I don't have any insights to give you. So if you want to be part of the solution, let's do this together. Like Uva is going to build the insights as we collect the data, but help us build that. We sold out 4 times in less than 3 months. Women are so hungry to be part of
Yeah.
the solution.
Yep.
And when you're doing it from a genuine place, like I'm not overselling anything to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
I'm telling you I don't have the answer right now, but we want to find it. Right. And so women want to be part of that. And so it was a great experience for us to like collect all this data. What has happened since is we have been really active in publishing our findings. There's a few big things that I'd love to share. One, you think of perimenopause, you think hot flashes. That is not the number one symptom that our patients are complaining about. It's mood, anxiety, stress, and sleep,
Yeah.
all
100%.
mental health related.
Yes.
And they
That's
have
what we
been
see.
progressively dismissed, right? Or put on anti-anxiety meds that they just didn't need to be on. They need to get their hormones in check, right? So maybe it's HRT, maybe it's just like reducing that cortisol level, doing something that can also be done naturally, but you need to address the root cause. And no one took the time to understand that. So we published a bunch showing hormone trends associated with sleep. But then what we recently did is we actually looked at, I think it was close to 1,700 cycles of data. And we were able to actually map the trajectory of a woman through perimenopause, starting from late reproductive years all the way to postmenopause. You see a very distinct hormone pattern. And what's even more exciting is when you overlay the symptoms on top of that, you actually start to see a woman segment out. And you
How
can
were you
tell
able to
exactly where
do
she is.
that? Because have you been around? You
Hmm?
haven't been collecting this for over 10 years.
Mm-mm.
Oh,
We
how
have women in all different stages.
I see, I see. And sort of,
Yeah.
okay, got it.
And
Not
you
one
can correct.
individual woman through the whole
No,
period.
I wish. That's
Got
the
it. I know.
dream.
I
We're
know.
working on it.
Mhm.
That is the dream.
So
But you have the,
what did you find? Any like things you can share?
yeah, I think one of the biggest things is when you think of perimenopause, it's the same diagnosis you get from the moment you enter perimenopause all the way until your day 364 days without a period.
Yeah.
And tomorrow you're entering into menopause.
Yep. Yep.
Clinically, same diagnosis.
Yeah.
But how much
Very
time is
different.
between that? It's 7 to 10 years in that frame, right? You should not be hormonally the same day one of that journey compared to day 364 without a period, right? What we were able to see in our data is that with just a limited number, I'm going to say limited because like I'm a genomics person, so it's limited. Um, with the limited data that we had, we were actually able to sub-segment that perimenopause phase into 6 individual subsegments.
That's cool.
Yeah. And it's been clinically validated. We were able to present this at the Menopause Society, incredibly well received. We've now started thinking about how to actually integrate this with other partners so they can act on this data. And we've been continuously validating and improving it with additional clinical
What did you
partners.
see in these 6 phases? There's just differences in, like, how much the hormones are fluctuating, or what did you
It's
find?
it's the full profile. It's how much the hormones are fluctuating, so specific patterns. It's symptoms that they're experiencing, and then what we're starting to layer in is treatments that they're doing. So how are they moving across the spectrum?
Wow, that's
Because
really cool.
if you start a treatment, you may backtrack,
Yeah.
which might be what you want, right? So
Yeah.
how do we follow that? And that's what the new challenge has been. But it's been so exciting to see.
That's so exciting, and I think in some ways, we sort of believe this at Mavida Health as well. There's such a void right now and gap in the public sector in terms of research for women. As we know, this administration has sort of just cut research right and left, especially when it says women in the title. And so this is really exciting and I think important because some of these private companies like ours, I think, have to step in and do some of the research. And I think
Yeah.
ultimately that's where we are, where we're sort of, you're going to reverse engineer
Yes.
kind of all these phases of perimenopause and make it have more nuance than I think we've had in the past. And I'm just really thrilled for what this means for the future. I think obviously there are so many mental health implications during perimenopause and the other phases. But we know that kind of, and we're all about sort of understanding the female reproductive hormones, but I think it's been difficult to really understand how to quantify them, especially because the routine blood draws and the absolute numbers don't mean as much as patterns, especially when it comes to mental health. Um, where can people find more about UVA?
Going to our website, uva.life is the best place. Join our email. We always send out updates and new releases that we're doing. And then I think the other big thing to focus on is if there's a pain point that you're navigating right now and you feel like there's no one that's like seeing you, let us know because we're always trying to support the underdog or the person that's
Yes,
being completely
yes,
overlooked
yes.
because it's not just you. There's so many more that are like you.
No.
We'd love to support.
100%. And when we always, even though hormone replacement therapy or, there are a lot of different ways to help here, I think we always sort of go back to these situations of medical gaslighting and not being able to get answers to the questions that you have can cause a great deal of distress. And we always sort of think about and are proponents of mental health and getting support, whether it's just a like Mavida therapists are so well informed with all of these life transitions, and they can just be a support to you in like getting the care that you need and helping you script out what you're going to say to your OB next time you see them, in order to sort of show them your UVA results and make an argument for why you think you need specific care. And unfortunately, we're there. Like we are still at a place where we need to advocate for ourselves. But I love getting more education, getting more knowledge and data about your own cycle through UVA and sort of getting the support around what it feels like, potentially to knock on a few doors and not get the answers that you're looking for. So I think take things into your own hands, but be wary of the wellness influencer that doesn't do the research, that doesn't have the background. I think ultimately you can find a doctor who has the humility to say, I don't know, but let's learn together. And that's really our goal at Mavida Health and our goal with a lot of our referring partners. And we do some education for our OBs where, sometimes we gently say, listen, you may not have seen this, you may not have may not have solutions for them, but it can still mean it's happening. And I always say to patients, like, you're the expert in your body, It's a side effect that maybe I haven't experienced with another patient, but you're absolutely in your right to sort of have it. Um,
And I think
yeah,
that's beautiful because women need to be heard and they need to feel like someone's listening to what they're saying. So what you guys are doing at Mavida, I think, is so important. Sarah, really quick, do you want me to ask you a few questions? Because I feel like you've been interviewing me a lot.
for sure, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because I
that's
think
great.
the
Yeah, we can
design
edit.
is meant to be more fireside chat, and so then we can
Yeah, go ahead.
overlay.
Yeah,
We can.
yeah.
I'll let
Ask
you want
question.
to edit the crap out of this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No worries.
um, so, Sarah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey and how you navigated IVF and pregnancy loss. I think the mental health component is so often overlooked and not talked about, and I'd love to hear how you kind of incorporated your journey into founding Mavida.
Yeah. So for me, it was after I have three children. So it was after my second, which were spontaneous sort of pregnancies and deliveries. I actually had my first bout of what I would call postpartum anxiety. And that's when I was really sorry. I hear you typing and I think it's gonna pick up, unfortunately. If that's okay.
Start again. Start
That's
again.
okay.
Sorry.
I'll just sort of start. So, in my second postpartum, had some postpartum anxiety, and then ultimately realized that it was important to get care myself. I was with a general therapist, but didn't feel like they kind of understood exactly what I was going through, and I wanted more of that nuanced view. And I had an impossible time getting in. I had to like beg, say, "Hey, I'm an expert in this area. Please see me." And it was really kind of shocking to me that I had to flex in that way and try to sort of cut lines to get this really specialized mental health care that I knew is what I needed in that moment. Cut to, I had a pregnancy loss, second trimester, as well as then subsequently for my third child used IVF. And it was I just knew from that first postpartum that like no one should experience this. And then after those other experiences, it really fired me up to be able to scale the type of care that I was already doing in a private practice. I'm both a therapist and a psychiatrist that specialize in female reproductive hormones, but most of that care is out of network and really expensive and inaccessible. So I think in the same way that you said you wanted a urine test that was accessible to all, similarly, I wanted mental health care that was specialized and would be in network and geographically diverse. So we are in 4 states, but we are growing, and we're thrilled to sort of be available to people, even if they live out, in a rural area in New York and can't come to the city for their care, because so often the specialized field is in like academic centers in really big cities, and we think that everyone deserves access to this care. So that's sort of where it comes from. But I think there's a lot of parallels there and wanting to fix what I thought was broken for myself and have people have better experiences than I did.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head for sure. Kind of pulling on that thread, this is something that I also kind of navigated myself, but it's not just the fear of not being able to get pregnant. It's the specific anxiety that comes from not knowing what's actually happening inside your body. So in your practice, what does not knowing actually do to someone that like is it the uncertainty more than the diagnosis itself?
Yeah, I think uncertainty is really interesting because I think in some ways we use this as an opportunity for growth. Like, yes, it would be phenomenal to have more data about women, and what we have is not sufficient. I want to just be really clear. Like, endometriosis shouldn't take you 7 years and a surgery to get a diagnosis. Like, that is absolute bullshit. But I do think our bodies are sometimes ambiguous and we don't know what the future holds. And I do think that there is a level of acceptance that as human beings, we have to do around uncertainty. And I think this is sort of the first time a lot of women who maybe are used to controlling things, who are A type, sort of things feel out of control. But as we think about aging, as we think about cancer, as we think about all of these things that affect our mortality and morbidity, yes, there's so much we can do. And we can be those longevity bros that think they're going to live forever, but ultimately, like, life is uncertain. And I do think it is a part of it is sort of like, yes, learn as much as you can, get data points, but also hold, on the other hand, the fact that you may not ever know, you may not ever get, spontaneously pregnant, and sort of accepting that and facing that and going through it, not around it, is part of kind of the mental health healing, I think, around this.
I think that's really great context. So, like, it's kind of like what my doctor did to me, where she's just like, you have irregular cycles and that's normal for you, but then moved on. Like,
Right.
had she spent maybe 30 more seconds explaining
100%.
to me that this is not that
It's common,
uncommon.
or that, like, you have an irregular cycle, we may not know why right now. We
Right.
don't have the science to really tell us, and we haven't studied women who look like you, who are your age, right? And so you have something that I can't explain, but it's still really impacting you. I think that's all people need to hear, and yet it's been so hard, I think, in medical education to have that humility of like, I yes, that's an issue. I don't know why.
Right. You're absolutely right. Again, it's about being heard. And I think that's like, I hope that people listening can really adopt that because like patients need it. And I think clinicians also kind of need that.
I
If you don't
mean,
build that trust with your patient,
yeah.
it's
I
not,
think
it's not
I
going to
think
go
some
anywhere.
clinicians feel like, "Oh, I'm gonna look like I don't know what I'm saying," but, like, you're just telling the truth. "Hey, I
Right.
wish I knew more, but, you don't fall into the category of why you have an irregular period, and I don't think because of XYZ that you have PCOS." But there's probably, I mean, when you think about women and how they have chronic pain, how we have a higher likelihood of autoimmune diseases, I think there's so much that we don't know about female bodies, about how female hormones impact our bodies, that probably account for a lot of those issues.
Absolutely. I mean, that's perfect tie into this next thing. But like for a woman that's listening or watching to this that isn't trying to get pregnant, she isn't in perimenopause, but she knows that something is off. What would you say to her?
I think that's a tough one. First, talk to your friends. It might be the first place to start, but I think community and village, like the moment you start talking to other women about, like, hey, I'm having this symptom, like there is someone who will have had it or who will point you in the right direction. But I think it's also like, and it's hard because some people don't have a choice in what doctors they go to. But if you can choose, like have someone who listens to you, who takes the time, who will hear you, who will say, hey, I don't know about that, but let me read or let me find out more. Or, oh, hey, we don't have a lot of research into that. And then I have thought, which is really interesting, but for women, mental health care and a mental health provider has sometimes been the circle or sort of like the anchor for them, in sort of saying, I'm having all of these symptoms, and not that Mavida Health, our clinicians, are going to diagnose you or be able to give you answers, but at least they will validate, hey, I think this is going on, or hey, that sounds like it's really, really challenging. Like endometriosis is a great example. Having excruciating pain every single month, I'm sure that that's impacting your relationship, your work life. Like it has these global impacts. And sometimes trying to tease that out will allow people to sort of see themselves more clearly. And when a doctor says, hey, I think you're just anxious, you can say, like, hey, I'm in mental health care and we've already ruled that out. So here are my other symptoms. Thanks.
I think that's really important. Yeah, it's so hard because it is about finding the right doctor. And I will say that oftentimes the best doctors that I've gone to see were through recommendations or referrals through friends. It's
That's
actually one of
absolutely
the
right.
best like
Yeah,
systems that you have that I think
that's
many
absolutely
women
right.
don't
That's
leverage.
absolutely right, and I think you can hear red flags very early on. If a doctor cuts you off repeatedly, if they don't allow you to sort of explain your symptoms. Like one of my favorite questions as a physician is, "What do you think is going on?" Like, I'm curious about what have you researched? What have you done? What have you come up with? Tell me your ideas and we work together. And if someone is just telling you, I think that's like a really big red flag of like, this doesn't, mm-mm. I won't even listen to like, I've ruled this out. I've done that. Like that to me is like, I'm leaving and not coming back.
You know, that's so fun. It's interesting you say that because that's exactly what happened in my last like annual physical. And my doctor, like of course you go with like this laundry list of things that like you just want to talk about. And she asked me a similar question to that. So what do you think is happening? What do you think has changed since the last time I saw you? And we literally troubleshooted it together. And it
Yeah.
didn't take that long. It did not
No.
take, like, an hour.
No, and I just wish more of that was part of medical education, but we'll see.
That's the EQ part that I
Yeah, that's
think.
the EQ part. I think they're recruiting, medical students to have more EQ
Mhm.
like, for so long, you know this, test scores and
Yeah.
grades were, I think, overly valued, because there's still so much that you, don't know. I maybe like I trained like 15 years ago, but then it was like everything that you're going to learn in medical school is obsolete. And so
Right.
this is really about learning how to be curious because as you practice, things will ever evolve. And I don't know why there's this like this type of physician or this particular personality physician that just gets like stuck in what they know and won't sort of make the mental won't doesn't have the mental flexibility to kind of change with changing times. But I love, to be, questioned and sort of like, "Oh, well, this has changed," or "I've heard of this." Like, I had a patient tell me about a new chronic pain medication that I hadn't heard of, and it's like, "Oh, fantastic." Like, I hadn't heard about that because I'm not it's first of all, it's kind of outside of my scope of practice, but things change so rapidly. And I think if both as clinicians and as patients, we have to kind of think about that and also be kind and generous to our physicians who maybe haven't learned something specific that you went on an internet rabbit hole on.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's so interesting because, like, when I did my PhD, one of the things that they said to us, like, when you go in for your acceptance and they do this, like, recruitment day to get everyone that got accepted to actually come to the school, they said that one thing that makes us stand out is there's no textbooks because everything you're going to learn in this program is outdated by the time it comes into a textbook.
Yeah, yeah,
So we're going to be learning through articles and, like, bringing the experts into the room so they can
that's great.
teach you from their experience.
That's absolutely right.
I don't think that's how most folks are trained to learn, right? Like, even thinking like, that was a very new thing for me to, like, go
Yeah,
into school and not have a textbook to
yeah,
highlight and go
yeah.
crazy
I
with.
didn't have textbooks at all in medical school or residency.
Yeah, that's amazing. So it's nice that that's starting to get embraced because, yes, the like, technology, science, medicine is all moving so fast. We have to adapt quickly.
That's right. That's right. And so I think there's many of us that are trying. Don't lose hope to those who feel exasperated, overwhelmed by traditional, medical systems.